Many of you know I've been building out my 2004 4Runner into an overlanding and camping rig so that I can take my dog with me on adventures. And I've added quite a few things to the build already, but this Jackery Explorer 1000 is quite literally the heart of the entire build and the thing that enables me to be off-grid for days at a time. This video is sponsored by Jackery, and when they reached out to ask if I'd be interested in reviewing one of their bigger power stations like the Explorer 1000 here, I jumped at the chance because it was exactly what I was looking for this 4Runner overlanding multi-day off-grid camping build that I'm working on. I'm trying to get away from dealing with coolers and ice and leakage and water and stuff inside the rig, and so I bought an electric cooler and I was looking for something to power it for multiple days, parked somewhere without having to run the rig, and this thing fits the bill perfectly. It's been really great doing exactly that and powering everything else I've needed. And not just powering it all, but powering it for days. I got over 2.5 full days with this, running my fridge in 90+ degree heat, some of the hottest days of the year. So I've been very impressed with it so far. So let's talk about some of the specs and features. True to its name, the Jackery Explorer 1000 is a 1,000 watt-hour lithium-ion battery. That's enough to charge a laptop 9 times, or as I discovered, run an electric cooler in 90+ degree heat for multiple days. It has a 12-volt outlet, 3 AC outlets, 2 USB-C outlets, and 2 USB-A outlets, all of which can be used at the same time. So you can literally charge 8 devices at once with this thing. It has a pure sine wave converter for stable charging that won't harm your devices. It can be charged via a wall outlet, solar panel, or a 12-volt charger in a car or an RV, which is how I've kept it charged on my recent multi-day adventures, including a trip we did overlanding, camping, and driving the 4-wheel drive rigs on the Oregon BDR on Section 5. The battery in this thing is good for 500+ cycles. It measures 13 by 9 by 11, and it fits perfectly under the platform I built here in the 4Runner to sleep on and put storage in. So I just literally keep it right there. It's very perfect. That's like a happy accident, but damn, did that work out really well. This thing is shock resistant, which is great when you're taking it out on bumpy roads, driving over big rocks, doing sand, and all the other stuff that you're gonna do in a 4-wheel drive vehicle. It's also fire resistant, has a high temp shutoff, and has this really convenient, very sturdy handle built right in, so it's very easy to move this thing around despite it weighing 22 pounds. Some people might consider taking a generator with them on overlanding adventures or even like in a trailer, but a battery pack like this is much nicer because you don't have to deal with noise. Doesn't require any maintenance. There's no emissions. It doesn't need fuel, especially if you're just plugging it into your rig or using a solar charger. There's a lot of advantages here over maybe carrying a generator with you. So I always like to do pros and cons of any product that I review. So the pros, the things that I really like about this Jackery Explorer 1000, one, ridiculous battery life, like I said, twice now already. It ran my fridge for 2+ days. Another great thing about it is that it has pass-through charging, so it can charge and discharge at the same time. So I've got this plugged in here. This is the charger for the Jackery, and it's plugged into the 12-volt port right here in the back of the 4Runner. Simultaneously, I have this plug, which is for the fridge, plugged in to the 12-volt outlet on the Jackery. So it charges while I'm driving, keeps the fridge running the entire time, and then continues powering the fridge when I shut off the rig and park for multiple days. So it's a really great option for something like this. You've got a quick charger here on the front if you're charging something via USB, and it also just charges up really quickly. I was impressed with how fast I was able to get from 0 to 100% and how well just the 12-volt charging here in the 4Runner keeps it topped off while I'm driving around. It has super solid build quality, and if you're planning on going out into the backcountry, this thing is gonna get knocked around in the rig. Obviously, it's gonna get very dirty. There's a ton of dust flying up all the time when you're doing these rides and these trips, and it's probably gonna fall out of here more than once, and I feel very confident that when it does, it's just gonna bounce off the ground and keep on ticking. It's a super solid build feeling. I know sometimes you order certain products from certain places and they feel kind of chintzy or cheap when you get them, and this definitely feels incredibly solid. Like when they say it's shock and fire resistant, I believe it. That's something that I look for something that I'm going to use out in the middle of nowhere and depend on. The display has a ton of super useful information. So it's got an input and an output meter, both in watts. So it'll tell you how many watts are coming in from the charger and how many watts are going out to the things it's charging. It's got a battery indicator, it's got a percentage, and then just a picture so you can see it from farther away. But it's a small display. It just gives you the information you need, nothing else, doesn't take up a bunch of space, doesn't give you one big weak point to worry about smashing stuff into when you're throwing it around in the back of your rig, and I like that about it. The other thing I really like is it's just simple. You plug it in and hit a button and your stuff is charging. I've used some devices like this this that were more complicated than rerouting power to the deflector shield on the Starship Enterprise. You need an Android brain to work the damn thing. This thing, super simple, plug and play, plug it in, hit the button and go. It charges on its own, discharges on its own. It's great to just be able to plug it in here in the runner, drive around, know that if I stop for a couple days in the same place, it'll keep the fridge running. And if I needed to, if I was going to do multiple days, 3-4 days in the same place, I could just plug in a solar panel that's on the roof and keep it charged without ever running the rig. But when I'm driving around, so if you're traveling, camping, driving, it's never going to run out of power because your rig is just going to keep it charged. So I just think that's the perfect solution for what I'm doing here and for many other types of outdoor activities. It also is great as like a home backup. If you just need extra power, you need peace of mind, this thing can run an electric heater, it can run a little fridge if you need it to, it can run a lot of devices, keep your cell phones charged up in an emergency situation. So it's just worth considering for that as well, and I'm just excited to have it in the house both when I'm camping and also, we live up here kind of in the woods, and there's only one road in and out, and if we had a bad storm or we got stuck up here for a few days and the power was out, it's nice to know I have this thing available to keep things charged and just give you that peace of mind. Those are the pros. What are the cons? There are two very obvious ones, I think. One is pretty heavy. It's 22 pounds. It's also not very compact. So it's obviously not something you're going to take on a motorcycle adventure unless you're driving a GS with a huge top case or something, in which case you could probably rig it up to keep it charged just like I was talking about using it in here. But in general, it's not going to be your motorcycling type of thing. It's going to be a car camping thing. It's going to be a home backup thing. It's pretty big. Now, I do have a much smaller Jackery that I've reviewed in a previous video that works great on the motorcycle. It fits in a pannier pretty conveniently and powers a ton of stuff. If you're keeping your cell phones and cameras charged like I do when I'm out on a motorcycle trip, it's a good option, so you can check that one out, but I probably wouldn't go with the 1000 for that in particular. The other thing that's kind of a disadvantage is that it's expensive. It's not a cheap piece of kit. None of these batteries are, and what you're paying for is the amazing amount of charging that you can get out of a battery this large. The only way to get that is to pay more money because lithium isn't cheap. It's a lithium-ion battery, and they're just not inexpensive. Those are the two biggest cons, and honestly, I was really racking my brain trying to come up with anything else because I like to give fair and balanced reviews, and it just does what it's supposed to. It's sturdy and it has some cool features, and I'm just gonna get a ton of use out of it in this overlanding build and here at the house too, like I said, in the wintertime when we worry about losing power. So my overall conclusion, the bottom line is this. Jackery is probably the most well-known of the manufacturers of these types of battery backups, generators, whatever you want to call them. And there's a reason for that. They make a good, solid, quality product that lasts a long time. A lot of people use and recommend them, and they do what they're supposed to do. They're simple, and they keep your stuff charged, which is what you're after when you spend $1,000 on something like this. You want to know that it just works, and it does in my experience and testing. And I haven't been nice to it. It wasn't a very easy route we did on Oregon BDR Route 5. We chose it on purpose because it's one of the hardest sections of the whole route. Charger's well built, rugged, and incredibly useful for a ton of different applications. I'm looking forward to it powering my overlanding and camping adventures all winter and beyond. Highly recommended from me if you're looking for off-grid power or just a battery backup for home and you don't want to deal with generators or any of that other nonsense. You can keep it recharged with solar panels in an emergency at home. So lots of versatility and options here. It's rugged, it does the job. It can take a beating. I've just been really pleased with it, and I think it's a good product. And bonus, if anyone ever tries to attack you, it makes a hell of a melee weapon. If you have any questions about the Jackery Explorer 1000, please feel free to leave them in a comment. Let's talk about it. I'll put a link to it for you in the description and in a pinned comment below so you can check it out for yourself. Thank you to Jackery for sponsoring this video and for sending me this thing to use. I'm going to get a lot of use out of it. But for now and as always, I just want to say thank you very much for watching, and please do not forget to be excellent to each other. Thank you.
Excellent!